Apparently we have one viewer waiting. So when
Jesus, I'm trying to sleep.
All right.
No,
Trying to
just go.
sleep. What kind of bitch
We're going. And we're live.
Oh yeah, you don't
Nice.
sleep? Stop.
Yeah, I sleep. I sleep from midnight to 4 a.m., bitch.
Welcome to the Three Bros Podcast.
Job's like, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
That's right.
Yeah, we're
and
doing it
hopefully that'll
again.
be by the time I hit 41.
Yeah, we're doing it again, and hopefully, Chad doesn't get triggered. So.
Oh, I do
All
get
right.
triggered a lot.
I think
We've
Cyril's
actually
triggered on this one.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I'm triggered everyone. We've actually talked about stuff like this a lot. So I found this article / study done by UPenn that says the title of it is "Echo Chambers May Not Be as Dangerous as You Think." And we've actually talked a bunch of times on here about at least I have. I'll speak for myself. About how like echo chambers are bad and like holding us back, detrimental, all things I've said. But actually, I mean, I think it depends on how you look at it, but this article doesn't put it in such a negative light. So there you go. Well, and I think a couple things when I read it, like, first of all, it highlights, which I think we all agree with, that whether, and this goes back to being open-minded, if you're in a group of like-minded people and they are pushing the boundaries, then you're more likely to go down those same like thought processes with them. Okay, but if you're talking to someone who disagrees with you and there's like healthy pushback, then like obviously you're less likely, do you know what I'm saying, to like go down a certain like kind of path. I just think like peer pressure and like groupthink, obviously, and it says it in the article, it still has a lot of effect on like what you think of in the moment, and all of us, even the best of us, you know, somewhat, because we all have biases. So
the thing that I want to point out in this article,
yeah, go ahead,
is the results show that individual beliefs in homogeneous groups became 35% more accurate after participants exchanged information with one another. I feel like this study is basing the idea on when you get a bunch of people inside this echo chamber, a lot of people within said echo chamber probably have different data to back up what they're stating specifically for their case.
Or just more the more there's people in there, then the more,
and that they become they become a bit more accurate as far as what they're talking about after they do that. The problem with the title, I feel like, is that, I mean, if you're so fucking far off in left field, you know what I mean? Like 35% more accuracy doesn't really change a bunch of people in a way that would be beneficial to society.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and unfortunately, this is only one study, and there's been a lot of studies that say the opposite in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So although I hope that people, as they're in this homogenous group, have a better understanding of what's occurring, I still am leaning towards it's still a poor way to interact with your fellow citizens.
Well, there's a very specific line in this article that I think gives a lot better context to this study. Because they had two focus groups. They had Republicans and Democrats, and they asked them certain questions, like fact-based questions. And the idea was that as a consensus, because the idea is they all had to agree, like they all had to talk to each other and come to a consensus. And it was in that context that they became more accurate. But I just want to read this part from the article where it says, "It is important to note," Becker points out, which I assume is the guy who ran the study, "that participants in the study were motivated to be more accurate, which is an important factor in social information processing." So the context of the study was, you guys you need to be accurate, or we're looking for accuracy here. Whereas that's not a context that's necessarily existing online in echo chambers. People are just talking to each other, shooting from the hip. You know, when the motivation is be accurate, then that's when probably they're converging on more accurate information. But I don't think that this is what actually takes place online at all.
Right.
I think people engage in more dramatic, like exaggerated types of discussion because it's just more fun. It's more fun to talk like that, to not be so accurate.
Do you think that a large part of the issue when it comes to echo chambers, and I'm kind of getting away from the article a little bit, is the fact that we don't do a very good job in educating people on how to fact check appropriately?
Yeah, I think that needs to be part of. I think everybody that goes through public education now needs to take some sort of media literacy course. I think that's just a necessary part of what a base education should be, because the internet is such a vital part of our lives. I mean, there's a lot of people that have a problem just fact checking. I mean, the amount of times that mom comes to me with something from Facebook and it takes me about 4 minutes of Googling to figure out that, maybe the claims that you heard were being a little exaggerated. I'll never forget when she came into my room one day and she was like, "I'm not buying you Mountain Dew anymore. It can make you blind." And I was like, "What are you saying? What are you saying?" Pause, because I need you to show me exactly what you just read. So I read it, and what it ended up being was some guy who used to drink 2 or 3, like 2 liters of Mountain Dew a day. And there's like a specific chemical in Mountain Dew that if you drink it at that amount and it accumulates, it can mess with your vision. But it was such like an extreme example, and she came to me as if it was fact, and that nobody should purchase Mountain Dew anymore because people are going blind out there.
This is the meme that I reference when we have these conversations.
Yeah.
FreedomEagle.Facebook says Hillary invented AIDS. What in the...
FreedomEagle.Facebook. I love that.
But I think to Cyril's point in posting this article, ultimately I think an echo chamber is kind of like a safe space for a lot of people to be able to talk because they feel like people agree with them. And to Cyril's point, the echo chamber, as far as getting to accuracy, might be something that's worth doing if, in fact, people challenge accuracy.
Right. That has to be the goal. Right. But if the goal is to just belittle the other side, then you're not really pursuing accuracy first, are you?
Well, we're not belittling anyone because the idea would be is that this is a homogenous group. So theoretically, nobody would be really belittling in a way that you would be doing left versus right.
Of course you are. Have you ever stumbled?
Not to the extent.
Oh, come on now. I'll point you to any Breitbart comment section, and you will just. Now, to be fair, that's not a fair example.
That's excessive.
That's okay. Fair enough.
That's on the edges of the bell curve, my friend.
You're right. You are right.
We're talking. To me, I'm looking at the middle of the bell curve. What are people in the 60% of the bell curve doing?
Yeah, that's fair. And unfortunately, we do tend to pay attention to those bigger outliers on the internet just because it's more interesting to watch the batshit crazy people go at it. But yeah, I would say that for the most part, most people at that 60% of the bell curve are just normal people who are taking in all of this information. They probably are friends with a lot of people who are in different echo chambers, and they probably get exposed to a bunch of different things. And I don't know. I mean, I could see how echo chambers could be somewhat advantageous, at least in terms of furthering like the specific beliefs and what the facts actually are, I guess. I don't know if I'm explaining that well. But I think the other thing that's interesting here, and Cyril was talking about this a couple weeks ago when I saw him. Cyril, what did you say? It was like safe space conversations? Wasn't that safe space discussions or something like that? Safe space debates. That's debates. What it was. And I suppose it's not entirely related to echo chambers, but I guess the idea is instead of trying to argue for your something or other online and getting belittled like with friends and family, whatever, a safe space debate is where somebody could have a disagreement with somebody, but it's a respectful conversation, one that's based in fact, one that's people aren't jumping to conclusions about each other. And I'm totally on board with that, because safe space is another one of these buzzwords like echo chamber where you sort of immediately associate it with a negative connotation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I suppose that's a bit of an aside, but yeah.
Yeah, look, I mean, what did I say that day too? I said you need to have, I guess not someone you necessarily respect, but you need to have someone that you'll at least listen to that disagrees with you. It's just not a good learning environment. Well, I won't even say it like that. You're not going to gain a lot of wisdom by just sitting in a like circle of things you already know.
Do you? I kind of want to pause you there. Do you think there's a significant
wisdom comes from
today between people, like what their idea of wisdom is, as opposed to what their idea of like information is? Like information, is knowing that X is factual, whereas wisdom is understanding how that applies to. In our cases, a lot is like society. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that also factors into this like echo chamber process, or no? Not really.
I think it does because I think I don't know if this has anything to do with what you just said, but you gain wisdom by being able to see things from a lot of different perspectives, not just one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you can look at a lot of different perspectives, and you at least have an understanding of where someone else comes from, then I don't know. It just makes for a better conversation. I feel like there's a lot of people who are caught up in the idea that like the other side, quote unquote, if you will, they're doing this because of like hate, or they want to kill. You know what I'm saying? Or they wanted this or that. It's like nobody is that. What is going on? Like, so.
I don't know, man. Antifa.
Yeah. All right. Well, come on,
Right. I mean.
Well, along those lines, have you ever thought about like? I thought about this when you guys were talking earlier. Have you ever thought about like the fact that extremist groups will never go away? And I think we could already agree on that without me saying what I'm about to say. But like, no matter what you do, if we're gonna let as long as they're not violent or hurting anybody physically, if we're gonna let extremist groups be what they are, which I'm not opposed to, you're always gonna have people like that. There's no like amount of education that you can like 100% get everybody there, especially because a small group of people, especially in this day and age, can be persecuted pretty quickly online, swiftly, like the mob. People call it, if you listen to JRE or anything like that, like the internet mob will come for you, kind of thing.
Right.
Like, I don't know, like if you have extremist ideas, no matter how much you educate, if someone just falls into that circle, I think the crushing mob also reinforces that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I bet you there's people who believe crazy things who are even more hardened in their belief after the quote unquote like mob came after them. It's like, oh, I think that
God,
the earth is flat. And then all of a sudden, like these people alienate themselves from family because like they think that everyone's like the enemy. You know what I'm saying? The enemy. Like, so you're always going to have people and once you try to educate them, like human beings, like at the end of the day, they're just going to like bond into groups, and they have like a drive to do that as well. Like we all have a drive. We all want to be accepted on some level. Like there's only been a handful of people who just like went out in the woods and lived there, and I have a lot of respect for them, but nobody else is like that. So I don't know. You just, you do what you can. You try to make the majority of your society as reasonable as possible, and then like the rest of it, you just kind of gotta,
do you think
let it go.
Do you think people our age are going to be better at discerning between fact and sort of dogma online than the older generation is?
In terms of like
fake news, consuming, let's say fake news. right? Because if you look at some studies that they've done, the people who are more likely right now to consume fake news
I hope our
are
generation,
older folks.
I hope not even our generation, but I hope we do get I hope we do figure out where the stability line is. I think right now we're a little too unstable. We're a little top heavy as a society, and I think we're having trouble where we draw the line. And I hope that we get there, but who knows? We might not. You know what I'm saying? Like it's of my opinion that the inequality right now is a little too top heavy, and I think that we can do better. But where that line is drawn, like I don't know, you don't know, Caleb does, nobody knows, and maybe someone thinks that we're bottom heavy still, and they want to move the line even farther. Like, I just hope our generation figures out how to do. It's vague, but just do things better because they're not good. So, and I can point to actual things, but I'm just being vague for the sake of explaining myself, I guess. So, I mean, it's all. I mean, we're starting to get a little too deep, but it's all relative because some things we do better on, like a lot of things we don't. But like good old technologies that have been there for us, for our standard of living, for sure. Even though human beings have been trying to fuck other human beings up forever, technology is actually like driving against that force, correcting humanity's stupid,
Trying to, at least. Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah. Well, we shouldn't say trying to. It's not like AI. But like being able to mass farm and all these things that just make things more easily attainable in this day and age. Old Man Cyril reminding you to be thankful.
Old Man Cyril. That's the youngest old man I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you're allowed to call yourself old man yet. Caleb's about to, though. Got him.
Listen, boys. You know what I'm saying?
Sorry, that was probably a bit unnecessary. No,
it's all good. I mean, this thing wasn't long. It was just curious because I definitely and look, almost like I said at the beginning, we just like to talk because we like that, but it's almost like I said at the beginning, like there's different ways you can look at it. I can see why they, from reading it real quick, like I can see where they're coming from.
Yeah, I definitely see
there's different ways to
there's
different ways to approach it and interpret it. So
well, because I'm of the opinion, and we've definitely had some growing pains with the information age, but I am definitely of the opinion that all this conversation that's taking place online will ultimately be for our benefit rather than our detriment. Even though things are real heated, and maybe things just like aren't as clear or facts aren't really as based right now, I think that'll come back. And I think all this conversation will ultimately benefit us. So I totally understand where the study is coming from. I mean, they definitely had results.
Real quick side tangent.
Sure.
Do you think that humanity might come more to grips with just being better to the earth and each other because we have more people that do believe in the fact that the universe is billions of years old and we're small and space is out there and we understand more about it and we understand the elements and just our understanding of the world and putting that in perspective for people, I feel like will help. The more people can I'm not saying detach from religion. I'm just saying more attach. You can keep your religion. I don't care, but attach more to the reality of the fact that we are insignificant. Like there's still a lot of people on this planet who think that we're the most significant and Muhammad/Jesus told us that we are wonderful. And we are the center of you know what I'm saying? Come on, are you kidding me?
More insignificant though. I don't know if it's necessarily that, because I agree with what you're saying. I do think that this idea of a more collective humanity is going to be more prevalent with younger generations as we proceed here. But I don't think it's because we're insignificant. I think it's because maybe
I
it is.
Shouldn't
maybe
put
it's
it that way, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fair. Because we are literally just like this speck out here in this massive ocean, and there's no reason to quarrel over small things on this planet when there's.
Imagine trying to convince someone to save our planet. Okay, and their response to you when you let's say Chad Dunham's zealous and out there and he's selling his new political party, whatever the fuck, just talking to people. and he's like, the planet is dying. Here's like, he has reports in his hands. He's like, this is, blah, blah, blah. Like, we need to do better. Imagine trying to debate someone who their first response to you is like, oh, the planet's only been around for like 6,000 years. Who cares? Revelations is coming anyways. Like, there's literally nowhere to debate there. There's nothing to say. Do you know what I'm saying?
No.
Like, that's tough. And so now imagine maybe a society that has less of those people and more of the kind of people that realize that, like, hey, like, the balance to life on this planet is important, and like we understand the science of our nature and our climate, and we understand like just more about the way things work and how it needs to be respected, and things can be muddied up, and
I don't know if you guys have seen the original Cosmos with Carl Sagan.
Oh, I have. It was a while ago.
But there's this one speech where he talks about the pale blue dot. And there's this quote that I immediately thought of when we were talking about this that I think kind of speaks to what we're talking about. It's well, this is only a portion of the whole thing. The whole thing's great if you haven't seen or read it. But let's see. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors so that, in glory and triumph, they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. All in this small, pale, like, just to own, for a piece of time, some fraction of this pale blue dot.
Right. Now,
so our perspective is moving out, is what I'm saying. And I think we'll become...
Human being instinct is what it is, and we still will fight over domain in certain ways, just as what it is.
Well, that's not what he's saying here.
And I think... No, I know. But that is what I was going to say, but that is correct, and I hope, like, as we move forward, like, that realization, or at least getting more people to, like, accept that reality, then I think it'll get better. But you're always chasing something else, This talk got real deep, but let's go there for a couple minutes. You're always chasing something else,
Yeah.
Always chasing something else. You guys ever like feel like growing up that like I felt this a few times growing up, where I just like had a self-realization of like the time I was living in and how advanced we were, even when I was like 10 or 11, like dang, like
oh yeah,
this is pretty built up and like all this crazy stuff. And also like I remember being young and like sitting in history class or like reading about history or learning about history and being like just having that general sense of like, oh, that's like the yesteryears, like that's, we're modern now. Do you know what I'm saying? But look, you get older and you realize you're always chasing something else. There's always problems. You whack a mole pops up. Okay, that's almost the beauty of it. So yeah. Whack moles,
Whack-a-moles. That's the beauty of it. Cyril Dunham.
We want to drive up people's standard of living, well, the brutal honesty. And it's not just brutal honesty, it's just honesty. We've used fossil fuels to do that very successfully. But now we're paying the price. And now we have to figure out if we can transition. Like, nobody should have to... Nobody, especially nobody here in us three, but especially nobody should ever have to apologize for humanity, like, using fossil fuels. Like, it's done a lot of good. We know that, like, okay, like, we need to figure something else out. All right, this isn't good.
Yeah.
I remember early on in the podcast, this is like 2 or 3 years ago. It's definitely like a lost episode from before. But I remember me and Caleb talking about GMOs for the first time. And both of us being like, yeah, people can bitch about it, but like GMOs has fed a lot of people. Like a lot of fucking people.
It's what gives us our access. Gives us our lives.
Right. I can't have a conversation / debate with you if you're just like, it's just like that guy who thinks the rapture's coming, so fuck the planet. It's like, dude, how do I have a conversation with this person? You're not acknowledging that GMOs have done a lot of good in certain ways. I just,
There's a video of a congressman who talks about how we need not worry about climate change. There's no way we could impact the Earth. Only God could impact the Earth.
See, that's, oh my gosh.
There's
no room for a conversation.
Sorry?
Okay.
Come again, Caleb? Please, go ahead. Center stage.
I think, to me, I only say that jokingly.
Obviously. Go ahead.
I would hope so.
But I say it because, I've been pondering this a lot lately. this concept of God to me, right, is just
Next week.
humans
Yeah.
putting out this idea of what a perfect human would be, and that we're all in our own way a god. We just have to achieve a certain level to be that person that we want to be.
Oh,
And
you
that
got
in and of
very
itself is God. To me, at least.
you got
Yeah,
very
that
Jordan
makes sense.
Peterson on me. Have you been watching him lately, or is that
Well, no, that makes
just like
sense to me.
No,
No,
I'm
no.
not disparaging him. That's totally something that JP
That's
talks about a
that's
lot, though.
so in light of my recent transition in my job, I've had a lot of time to self-reflect, and
Mm,
I'm coming closer and closer to that conclusion that the idea of a God, although to me does not mean some all being that created everything you see before you and around you, but is in fact what humans aspire to be, whatever that may be.
yeah, it gives you context to how you are, and it lets you perceive how you
But I
should be or
think
how you want to be.
Yeah,
I
Or how
think what
can
the
things
see
should
big
that.
be.
I
miss
have issues
is,
with that,
though,
but whatever.
sure. Well, I think the big miss, though, is that
Yeah.
to me, God is the interpretation of how you see yourself in a perfect environment, if you
Sure.
will.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people today take God, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people, well, I guess, yeah, a lot of people take God as what other people describe as the perfect human. And that to me is the fallacy of religion currently.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What do I give a shit what Cyril thinks the perfect human is when I'm just trying to be my own perfect human?
Mm-hmm. This got
Right?
real deep.
Sorry,
But my
I didn't
thoughts
mean
real
to do
quick.
that.
Oh, no. My thoughts real quick on this. No, this is nice.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of ways. I don't think. I'm not gonna say I think. I think it's a fallacy to think. God damn it.
Sorry, go ahead.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong though. Appreciate you. It's like there's plenty of ways to get to morals, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like it's not like anybody who tells you like everybody else has it all wrong as far as like how we achieve or how like humanity got its morals or how you get your morals. It's all like God or it's all not. Like no, like there's I don't know, man. It's just something that like everybody has their own experience. And I get a little I saw a Sam Harris and JP debate and I get a little tired of the whole like oh, even if like dude and this is where like Sam Harrison have you ever seen these either one of you?
Yes, I
Have you ever
have.
seen these?
I have.
This is where they get into it.
I
They can't even
haven't.
get past the word
They can't get
because
past truth.
they
yeah.
both just have different, like so the thing with me is when Sam, JP will be like, "Oh, Sam, like you don't even if you don't." This is my thing with JP. Even if you don't recognize it, it still plays a role in your life, like for your morals and stuff. The fact that there is like some, do you know what I'm saying, Chad? And that's you know how they can never get past that where like Sam's like, "Oh, well, you can, you can kind of get to his place in different ways." I don't even know if Sam says that, but he doesn't agree that like the only way is like some like
Yeah, no, I know what you mean because Jordan Peterson
like
talks about
God
how and this goes back to what Caleb had
my
sort
shit
of
with
offshoot us onto was God is more of this like it's a collection of these stories that develop sort of a context to what life should be or what a person should be or how living should be. And that's fine and dandy and all if that works for you, but he's also convinced that somebody who doesn't believe in that sort of a collection of stories is somebody that can't really build a reasonable base for their morals, which is absolutely insane.
Right, and I understand what Caleb is saying. What he originally started off with makes sense to me because like
yeah, no, I'm on board.
You can't have a basis of how you can improve. Like that's a slippery slope to not have. Like if you think you're the best thing going, that's not good. You know what I'm saying? Like you should always have like this perfect identity or person in mind, or maybe not always, but like there should, like if you don't have that, then there's nothing to chase. Like if you just think you're like the hottest shit, which some people do and it's insufferable. If you think you're like the hottest shit and like you can do no wrong, then like, I agree with the idea that you need to.
It just doesn't necessarily have to be a supernatural context. That's all.
No, it doesn't.
Well, I mean, no, it doesn't. But the idea again for me that I've been pondering lately is that if in fact God is just me, just a better version of me, and I can slowly but surely use things like stories from old ancient texts that don't have to be, by the way, one of the dominant religions, right? And it doesn't actually have to be ancient text either. It could be a fucking YouTube video I watched that drives me into a direction of being a better human being. It could be
book.
It could be watching a Sam Harris or a Jordan Peterson. It could be reading this. Like one thing that I always point out that I identify very closely with. What's that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like if it's across cultures, then where did that come from? Where did that, like, if these cultures didn't interact with each other and they all kind of came up with, like,
it is interesting because we do seem to be converging now on a collection of what we determine what is moral.
Well, I think the basis, first of all, started with this idea of survivalism, right? Like, don't kill other people because you may need them to help protect you and yours.
Yeah,
right?
Well, don't kill
like
your
that's,
people.
Well, true. But that's where it started.
People.
Well, but that's where it started.
Right.
If you start from this basis of survival specifically, like when you go back to the Bible and you like, it always talks about making babies. Like, fuck. Like, we're at a point in human history where we don't need that.
Well, that's
coming from somebody who has two of their own. You know what I mean?
On the way. Right.
No, but my point there is that like that was to.
It was practical.
Right. You needed that in order to survive. You needed to have a bunch of kids to help work land so that you could grow food or you could hunt or you could gather or whatever the case may be to make a small society, essentially, a tribe, so that you could survive.
That's why they didn't like the gays? Do you think
I do.
That purely had to do with reproductive reasons?
I think that's where it started, and then because humans gravitate towards tradition, it slowly grows into this out of control idea that like.
I totally agree.
There's a lot going on there too, because like obviously every human being is well aware of what climaxing is, okay, and that can be like a quote unquote spiritual moment. So if that
do go on
moment happens,
I'm waiting for the
typically in a procreation fashion between a male and a female. Okay, and that's like your like religious moment. Like, dude, I'm sure, I don't even know off the top of my head, couldn't even tell you, but I'm sure that over the years there's been like cultures that just worship sex or like, you know what I'm saying?
For fertility.
You know what I'm saying?
Dude, that's always, dude, that's
fertility has always been a huge
thing, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
No,
you're right.
Interesting
you're right.
Because these morals back then, the standards that we set, had to do with practicality, surviving, passing the species on, being able to defend yourself against the next tribe.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But now we've reached a point of excess where we're not so concerned. Things aren't so cutthroat anymore. So now our morals are sort of moving in a different direction where we're not concerned about the preservation of the species because we just kind of have that figured out. We're more concerned about like just doing right by individuals.
So I would challenge that slightly. Do you think that we're slowly moving into this different idea of preservation of species because we have so many people, because we're destroying our own planet? And that it's still preservation of species just from a different perspective. And that's what's changing our quote-unquote moral compass, if you will, these days.
But the thing is, when you're concerned with what your morals are, if you have to worry about where your next meal is coming from versus not at all, that completely puts a different context onto what you're going to think is moral and immoral.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
But I just find it interesting that the idea of religion in and of itself today seems to have been, and I hate to put it this way, but it seems to have been begat out of this idea of survival, and then slowly over thousands of years, people that may have had good intentions but articulated things in such a shitty form and somehow retrieved a certain level of power to be respected in what they said, and now you end up with religions that, where it's not okay to be gay. Like, you get stoned to death in the Muslim religion and in the Christian religion for being a homosexual, when the reality is that, like, if you take away the practical idea of replenishing the earth, like, that's literally the only reason that I can think of why you wouldn't want people to be gay.
Right. Because otherwise, what does it matter?
Right. Are you a good person? Do you contribute to the society, just like I do or anyone else? Well, okay, cool. Fuck off.
Right.
Literally and figuratively.
That's where we should end it.
Yeah.
Hardy, fuck off.
Wow. So join us next time when we figure out the evolution of morals through biology.
Always stay open-minded.
Yeah, right, dude.
Always stay open-minded.
I could do a lifetime of research and still not understand
Let people challenge you. You know?
Well, I think...
Hey, watch Cosmos. Are we just plugging stuff?
Cosmos.
I'm fine with this.
Are we plugging? Okay.
Cosmos.
Yeah, Caleb, throw your plugs out.
Watch Three Bros broadcast.
Jesus, you can't. That's just terrible.
Watch
absolutely terrible.
Tell your friends.
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Not
the movie.
That's where we're ending
Not
it
the
then.
movie.